Hello and welcome to Wyrd Wessex. I'm Andy.
And I'm Craig.
So today I thought we'd take a little detour from the usual dark stuff, true crime, ghosts, and chat about something a bit lighter, the TV show Stranger Things.
Nope.
What? But you specifically mentioned working on a Stranger Things episode.
Not exactly. I said the thing Stranger Things was based on, the Montauk Project.
The Montauk Project. So all my notes are about Stranger Things, mate.
All right. Well, maybe a quick Stranger Things primer for anyone who's been living under a rock for the past few years. Just kind of maybe you can get everyone up to speed.
All right. So, for those who haven't been their way through Netflix for the past few years, Stranger Things is set in the 1980s fictional town of Hawkins, Indiana. It looks like sort of a fun throwback to Spielberg. Stephen King really captures the 80s well, but there is sort of a sinister undercurrent to it all as well. The story starts with the disappearance of a young boy named Will Byers. His frantic mum, Joyce, played brilliantly by Winona Ryder, is sure he's still alive. Meanwhile, Will's mates, Mike, Dustin, Lucas, their little D&D group, start their own investigation, which leads them to a mysterious girl called Eleven.
Yeah, 11 is something else. She's broken out of a secret government facility, Hawkins National Laboratory. It's not your average lab, this place. Seriously secretive and doing some seriously strange stuff. And 11, she's got some major psychokinetic powers. While the boys are helping 11 and looking for Will, they uncover this terrifying parallel world, the Upside Down. This dark, decaying place is inhabited by a monstrous creature known as the Demogorgon, which seems to have somehow crossed over into their world.
Exactly, the series expertly blends the supernatural with Cold War paranoia. Hawkins' lab isn't just studying psychic abilities, they seem to have inadvertently, or perhaps intentionally, opened a gateway to this other dimension. There are shadowy government figures, clandestine experiments, and a palpable sense that something deeply unsettling is going on behind the scenes. So, Craig, where does this connect to the Montauk Project then? It sounds like Stranger Things has its own pretty wild mythology going on.
You're in a bit cockney when you did that deeply unsettling going behind the scenes.
Deeply unsettling going behind the scenes.
It's like, all right, come to kill your monster.
That's my roots coming through, man. That is.
So yeah, the creators, the Duffer Brothers, have openly stated that the Montauk Project was a significant inspiration for the show's premise. In fact, the show was originally going to be called Montauk. The idea of secret government experiments, psychic children, and interdimensional breaches, these are all key elements that are said to be part of the Montauk Project lore.
So you're saying that the weirdness in Stranger Things, the strange in Stranger Things, isn't entirely made up. There's this real world conspiracy theory behind it. Oh, still there? Hello. They've got him. And then there was one.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
You have
That's weird,
returned.
wasn't it?
That was weird.
Yep. I hope you carried on without me. Kept the
Yeah, I did
listeners
the whole thing.
entertained. Finished? Good. I guess stay weird.
That's it. And you.
And me. No. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it was the government or aliens or whatever they say, but someone's trying to shut us down, man.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's from the upside down. So you're saying that the weirdness or the strangeness in Stranger Things isn't entirely made up, that there's a real world conspiracy theory behind it all.
Yeah, that's the claim, and it's a wild one. Prepare yourself, Andy. The truth, as they say, is often stranger than fiction, especially when you're talking about shadowy government experiments on the fringes of reality.
Well, I live this sort of weirdness. Bring it on.
So, the Montauk Project. I mean, where do we even begin with this tangled web of alleged secrets and bizarre experiments? At its core, the Montauk Project is a conspiracy theory centered around the former Camp Hero Air Force Station in Montauk, Long Island.
Camp Hero. That sounds suitably ominous, I guess. What was supposedly going on there?
Well, The official history of Camp Hero is fairly straightforward. It was originally commissioned by the US Army in 1942 as a coastal defense station during World War II. It housed gun batteries to protect New York from potential enemy ships. Later, during the Cold War in 1958, a large AN/FPS-35 radar was built there, a massive structure that still dominates the landscape today. It was part of an early warning system against Soviet bomber attacks. The base was eventually decommissioned in 1969, and for a time it was largely abandoned before becoming a skate park. Skate park?
I mean, that would be a wicked skate park.
State park, Andy. Who wrote this? A state park in the 1980s.
So that sounds like a pretty normal trajectory for a military base. So where does the project come in?
Well, that's where things get decidedly less normal. The conspiracy theories claim that beneath the surface of this seemingly ordinary history, a series of highly secretive and incredibly strange experiments were being conducted, continuing long after the official decommissioning. The theories suggest that researchers at Montauk were pushing the boundaries of physics, consciousness, and even time itself. The alleged project supposedly built upon the research from the infamous Philadelphia experiment.
The Philadelphia experiment, that's the one with the disappearing ship, right?
Yeah, the Montauk Project is often framed as a continuation or a clandestine offshoot of that alleged wartime experiment into radar invisibility.
So is it worth us taking a little side trip and talking about the Philadelphia experiment itself first?
Sure.
So the Philadelphia experiment, sometimes referred to as the more dramatic sounding Project Rainbow, though that name doesn't seem to have been used at the time of the alleged events. The whole bizarre story really takes off after Morris K. Jessup published his book, The Case for the UFO, back in 1955. He then starts receiving some very strange letters from a guy calling himself Mr. Carl M. Allen, or Carlos Miguel Allende. In these letters, Allen claimed to have been an ex-merchant mariner at the United States Navy's Philadelphia Naval Shipyard in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, around the time of October the 28th, 1943. He painted this wild picture of a US Navy experiment gone completely sideways. Things get even weirder then. A copy of Jessup's book turned up covered in handwritten annotations, supposedly by someone with inside knowledge of UFOs and the Philadelphia experiment. Most people think this was Allen again. This annotated book was sent to the Office of Naval Research, which incredibly led them to printing a limited mimeographed version featuring these crazy scribbles known as Varro edition. Now, according to Allen's original letters, the Navy tried to make a destroyer escort, the USS Eldridge, invisible. He claimed to have seen it all from the SS Andrew Furuseth. Not only did it supposedly disappear, but it also teleported hundreds of miles to Norfolk, Virginia, before reappearing back in Philadelphia. And the crew, they are said to have suffered horrific and varied side effects, including severe disorientation, mental instability, and some even becoming physically embedded within the ship's structure itself, others becoming intangible, and some being described as frozen in time or space.
Yeah, I mean, the details are pretty disturbing. I mean, there's even examples of people rematerializing inside out, and some even vanished without a trace. Now, there are even claims that the surviving crew members may have been subjected to intense brainwashing or psychological manipulation to ensure their silence about the alleged experiment. Of course, the US Navy has flat out denied this ever happened, pointing out how it contradicts basic physics and the actual records of the USS Eldridge. But you can see why some people would think a government might try to cover up something so catastrophic. It's got that classic unsettling vibe of secret wartime experiments blurring the lines between fact and fiction. And we know there were other shady projects that did happen, MKUltra, the Stargate project. Even reminds me of a couple of X-Files episodes. I know Andy's a big fan. He's started to yawn. There he goes again. There's one called Triangle where Mulder gets thrown back in time onto a British ship that vanished in the Bermuda Triangle. And there's Dodd Calm, which is where Mulder and Scully start aging rapidly whilst investigating a reappeared Navy ship. It's another kind of freaky naval mystery with that lost in time feel similar to the Philadelphia experiment.
I don't know if you ever played a game called Command and Conquer.
Don't
Sort of
think so.
real time strategy game in Red Alert, Command and Conquer Red Alert, sort of set in an alternative World War II. And yeah, one of the special sort of weapons or abilities you can use is the chronosphere, and that's very much like supposed to be the Philadelphia experiment, but sort of gone wrong but gone right. So it's a way of like shifting objects from one place to another. But if you try and do it to troops rather than protected vehicles, they just die. So very much drawing on that, Philadelphia experiment lore, I think.
I like how you referred to it as the Philadelphia experiment gone wrong. And like,
oh yeah, that's true. This is true. Well, it went
what?
wrong, but also went right in that sense, I guess. Like they were like, oh shit, we can shift things away to other places.
Yeah.
So how does the Philadelphia experiment connect to the supposed goings on at Montauk? Both batshit conspiracy theories?
Yeah. So thanks for tuning in. Until next time, stay weird.
I've got a feeling there's a little bit more.
Yeah, so Montauk was thought to be a continuation of the experiment. Our main source for information is the book The Montauk Project Experiments in Time by Preston B. Nichols, which anyone's watching, I will just do the usual, flash it up on the screen. It's actually one of about 5, I think. I've only got the first 2. I gather they get even more crazy as you go through the series. Yeah, so I guess the next logical step is to delve into who Preston Nichols was and the origins of his research. Now, it's crucial to understand that this entire narrative has been met with significant skepticism, primarily due to the conspicuous absence of verifiable evidence, leading many to dismiss it as pure fiction. Interesting little note here is even in the book itself, it hints at this ambiguity. The introduction states, and I quote, "This work is being presented as non-fiction as it contains no falsehoods to the best knowledge of the authors. However, it can also be read as pure science fiction if that is more suitable to the reader."
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Interestingly put. In 1971, Preston Nichols, by profession, worked for a defence contractor called AIL, or Airborne Instruments Laboratory. Interestingly, at the time of publication, this was written down as BJM, which is the next letter on from AINL, which Craig's just pointed out, or has pointed out to me that, I don't know, it kind of makes him, he definitely wasn't a professional spy. That's quite a, but you're saying now he's passed and that's a sort of an updated version, right?
Yeah, so the book has little kind of like,
sort of annotations.
Annotations, yeah. And that's one of the things that's mentioned is they can now reveal who the company was. Because I guess you wouldn't find BJM, but you would find AIL.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I haven't checked, but that must be a real thing, surely. Otherwise, they wouldn't have included it as a cliff note.
So, with a background in engineering, he specialised in electromagnetic phenomena. Interestingly, he initially secured a grant with the aim of disproving the existence of telekinesis, only to reportedly discover evidence that it was, in fact, real. Following this, he allegedly made another intriguing observation: that all psychics seem to lose their abilities simultaneously at a specific hour, almost as if they were being jammed. Suspecting electromagnetic interference, he traced a signal directly to Montauk Point, emanating from an antenna on the Air Force Base itself.
So fast forward to 1984, even though the base was officially abandoned, Preston felt compelled to return to the site. Noticing a collection of leftover radio equipment, he made some inquiries that eventually led him to meet the caretaker. It was there, while looking around the deserted facilities, that he had a bizarre encounter. He bumped into a man who appeared to be homeless and dishevelled, yet this individual made some truly outlandish claims. The man insisted he used to be a technician at the base, and even more startlingly, that Preston himself used to be his boss. So like doing a do 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 do.
Why is it always EastEnders?
I don't know. Cliffhanger, innit? So yeah, He then went on to describe a massive experiment that had supposedly taken place the year before, in 1983, claiming that a large, terrifying beast had manifested, frightening everyone away and effectively shutting down whatever was happening there.
And so it was that Preston embarked on an investigation into the Montauk Project, what it was, and crucially, to uncover the extent of his own involvement and the reason behind his memory loss. He began to inquire around the local area, in shops, bars, and even with the police, gradually piecing together a bizarre picture. He heard tales of strange weather phenomena, like snow falling in August, and reports of incredibly unusual criminal activity erupting en masse for a concentrated 2 hour period before ceasing as abruptly as it had begun. Then, a chance encounter occurred. A man named Duncan Cameron walked into Preston's lab. Recognising a potential connection, Preston took Duncan to visit Montauk. There, Duncan recognised many of the buildings and identified their former uses. Following this, Preston employed techniques he had learned from his work with psychics to unlock Duncan's memories. These recovered memories allegedly contained a wealth of information about the Montauk Project, including the startling revelation that Duncan had been aboard the USS Eldridge during the Philadelphia experiment.
Oh, that's why his elbow was fused to his forehead.
Well, no, actually, according to these accounts, Duncan Cameron was on the USS Eldridge during the Philadelphia experiment in 1943 with his brother Edward, who is also said to have later become known as Al Bielek.
Yep.
There you go. It's, every now and then you encounter a name that's like, how is that pronounced?
It's also, I didn't read anything that suggested why he changed his name, but there's a guy called Al Bielek that is supposedly Edward.
Fair enough. Maybe his name
He's,
got fused.
yes. Or he's just hoping his next leap will be his leap home.
Oh, that takes me back, man. The story goes that after jumping off the USS Eldridge during the experiment in 1943, they experienced a form of time travel, purportedly arriving at the Camp Hero Air Force Station in Montauk, Long Island, in the year 1983. This alleged arrival in 1983 is how they became involved with the Montauk Project. Within this narrative, Duncan Cameron also revealed that his initial reason for visiting Preston's lab was that he had been programmed to kill him and destroy the lab. However, upon this realization, Duncan declared that he would no longer act upon the programming.
I'm sensing a little bit of disbelief in your voice as you read that.
Do, 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 do. Sorry, carry on. But yeah, it's got a bit Terminator, you know?
Yeah, it also happens to be the year I was born, but that's a coincidence. I am not involved.
Were you born, or did you appear in like this static blue ball of energy and demand someone's clothes, boots, and motorcycle? But yeah, it's a bit Terminator, isn't it?
Yeah. I also find it quite funny how he suddenly regains control of his mind. Like he's set programmed to kill, and then suddenly he's like,
Yeah.
ah. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe when you unlock memories, you regain the ability to control your own mind. Anyway, to keep things moving and to get to some of the more mind-bending aspects of the Montauk Project, we're going to gloss over some of the investigative legwork here. But it's crucial to understand that Preston allegedly discovered he had been living what appeared to be two separate lives, or perhaps existing in alternate realities or timelines. He purportedly held clearance and a significant role in another part of the company he worked for, even having his own desk labeled Project Director, a concept that might feel familiar to fans of the show Severance.
I was going to say.
Which is interesting, though, because, you know, this is before Severance.
Yes, yeah, maybe Severance took,
I
inspiration.
wonder. Yeah.
So, Preston's innie and he's outie.
Yeah. So, yeah, it seemed he was simultaneously employed at Airborne Instruments Laboratory and deeply involved in the clandestine project Montauk. All we ever wanted was a Montauk.
Beautiful.
Ba, 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 ba. No, sorry. And literally the whole way through writing this script, I had in my head, ba 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 ba, ba. And then after a while, I realized I was doing it out loud because then Ocean was like, "I've got this song in my head. It goes ba 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 ba."
No, that you weren't. That's just Ocean's latent psychic abilities.
So anyway, in another dramatic turn of events, while constructing an antenna for his lab, as he soldered wires together, his suppressed memories supposedly came flooding back. And by June 1990, according to his account, he had regained full recollection of his involvement in the Montauk Project.
So, I hear you ask, what was the Montauk Project and how was it funded?
So, Andy, what was the Montauk Project and how was it funded?
Funny you should ask that, Craig. According to Nichols' account,
I'm such a child.
The Montauk Project was a highly... I like it. According to Nichols' account, the Montauk Project was a... Oh, you're choking me. Oh. Oh, that was good.
I'm crying.
It's a serious
okay.
investigative podcasting here.
Go for it.
According to Nichols' account, the Montauk Project was a highly secretive research program exploring some truly mind-bending areas. At its core, it allegedly revolved around manipulating the human mind and the very fabric of space-time. Nichols claimed that the project explored realms like psychic warfare, time travel, and even interdimensional travel. They were supposedly experimenting on individuals with psychic abilities, attempting to amplify and weaponize these powers for their clandestine purposes. Furthermore, the technology explored was supposedly cutting edge, drawing upon alleged breakthroughs of the Philadelphia experiment. Concepts like powerful electromagnetic fields and intricate electronic equipment were said to be central to these bizarre experiments. Now, the question of funding for such outlandish operation is naturally quite murky.
Let me guess.
Well, you'll never guess it.
Nazi gold?
Yes, actually. The story, maybe you will guess it. The story goes that in 1944, a US troop train carrying a staggering $10 billion worth of Nazi gold went through a French tunnel. The train was then dynamited within the tunnel, tragically killing 51 American GIs. General George Patton, present in Europe at the time, investigated this inexplicable event. An American troop train bombed in Allied territory. Beyond the human cost, the fate of the $10 billion remained a mystery, and Patton's inquiries were reportedly blocked. Interesting to note here as well that Patton, I believe, did die in 45?
Will die eventually.
Yeah, but, fairly soon after that, just...
You saying they killed him?
Well, I'm not saying they didn't. The gold, however...
They've already shut my internet off once tonight, Andy. Don't make them do it again.
This gold, the story continues, eventually found its way to Montauk. $10 billion worth of gold allegedly served as the initial and long-term funding for the Montauk Project. Once these vast reserves were depleted, the project was purportedly financed by the infamous Krupp family, notorious owners of German munitions factories in both World Wars. Despite the head of the family being found guilty of war crimes and complicity with Hitler at the Nuremberg trials, he was paroled after a lenient prison sentence and allowed to resume his controversial arms dealings. By late 1971, the Montauk Project was allegedly underway.
Yeah, I mean, we know America smuggled Nazi scientists to safety in America and used them to continue research and eventually win the space race. So, Nazi gold too? Yeah, why not?
I mean, put in just there, actually, that it always made me laugh that they win the space race. It's like the USSR gets the first rocket up there, the first space station, the first animal in space, the first human in space, the first woman in space, the first spacewalk, but the Americans are the first ones to land on the first satellite, and the Americans land on the moon and be like, yep, that's it, we won. You know, that always.
Is it more? Is it not more that also they returned safely to Earth? Like, didn't Russia like kill that dog?
Well, the first one died. Yeah, it was more of can we have something up there and stay alive? I don't think they ever managed to, but they did bring animals down as well, Russia. But I think the first dog up there, they never intended on bringing down. It was more just to see if they could keep something alive up there. It's horrible, but I think America did that too. So
Is he
it's just more that the
still up there?
bench. But yes, yeah, I think in Marvel, it's hanging around as one of the characters. But
Hmm.
yeah, no, it just always made me laugh that like the benchmark for winning the space race was the moon, and like America did that. I was like, that's it, we won. No comebacks, no returns, not playing anymore.
All right. Well then, they continued their research and eventually got to the moon. How's that?
No, it's just something else I've always found a bit peculiar. That was all.
Hmm. Yeah. But
Should have
yeah.
been Mars. If they'd have had balls, it'd have been Mars.
We'll get to that, Andy. Yeah, you laugh now. All right. Look, it does fit the patterns of the shadowy dealings and exploiting wartime spoils. But after World War II, the United States government conducted a very real secretive intelligence program called Operation Paperclip. The primary goal of this operation was to bring German scientists, engineers, and technicians from Nazi Germany to the US for government employment. This occurred between 1945 and 1959. The operation was and remains controversial due to the past affiliations of some of these scientists with the Nazi regime and their potential involvement in war crimes. The US government often overlooked or downplayed the Nazi ties in the interest of national security and technological advancement. I am kind of envisioning Gru from Despicable Me meticulously plotting with his piles of gold.
I could
Yeah.
definitely see it that way. Absolutely. um, let's delve a little bit deeper into some of the notable figures brought over through Paperclip, as it really sort of highlights the kind of expertise in the US that the US was after and the sort of ethical tightrope they walked. The most famous example is probably Werner von Braun. He was a brilliant rocket scientist who was instrumental in developing Germany's V2 rocket, a weapon that caused immense destruction during the war. Despite his Nazi past and involvement with forced labour at Mittelwerk concentration camp where the V2 rockets were produced, the US saw his expertise in rocketry as invaluable for their own space program and absolutely did not want the Russians getting their hands on him first. He went on to become a central figure at NASA, leading the development for the Saturn V rocket that ultimately took humans to the moon. It's a staggering thought, really. A former Nazi SS officer, albeit possibly, sort of honorary rather than an active one, became, sort of the guy at the helm of America's lunar ambitions.
It's the "Are we the baddies" line, right?
Exactly, it's I've been around one of his facilities actually when I was in France, and it's like amazing to see the work, and then you go through the tunnels, and it sort of hits you the slave labor used from the concentration camps to do it.
Yeah. So another significant figure was Kurt Dubis. He worked closely with von Braun in Germany and served as the flight test director for the V2 program. He also came to the US through Operation Paperclip and became the first director of NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. He oversaw the launch of numerous crucial missions, including the Apollo 11 moon landing. Again, a man deeply involved in Nazi Germany's war efforts, became a key architect of American space exploration.
Then there was Dr. Hubertus Strughold, sorry, who is sometimes referred to as the father of space medicine. He conducted controversial high altitude and low pressure experiments in Germany during the war, some of which involved human subjects in ways that would be considered unethical and potentially war crimes by today's standards.
I think even by the standards of the time, to be
Yeah,
fair.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. It's
Shouldn't laugh.
definitely by today, but yeah. Despite these troubling aspects of his past, though, he came to the US and played a vital role in the development of life support systems for American astronauts.
Yeah, so Operation Paperclip wasn't just about rocketry. It also included experts in fields like jet propulsion, chemical warfare, and aerospace medicine. The US military and intelligence agencies were keen to exploit any technological advantage these scientists could offer in the emerging Cold War. The line between documented history and speculative conspiracy blurs somewhat when you consider the real life precedent of Operation Paperclip. Kind of makes the idea of a further, even stranger secret experiments like the alleged Montauk seem, well, not entirely impossible in the realms of the public imagination.
Yeah. Well, back to Montauk. One of the early experiments alleged to have taken place involved Duncan Cameron, the man who had been sent to kill Preston. Air Force technicians had noticed that they could change the mood of people on the base by changing the frequency and pulse duration of their radar. They took the reflector, rotated its direction, and angled it down into one of the buildings. Inside the building sat a chair, and in that chair sat a person. Most generally, usually, it was Duncan. They discerned that by changing the frequency and pulse, they could affect the mood. Whoever was in that chair. He would cry, laugh, become agitated, even fall asleep, depending on how they changed it. And rumours circulated that the entire base staff would be affected by it. These alleged early experiments with radar frequencies, influence, and mood are sometimes cited as a precursor to more advanced mind control claims.
Over 3 to 4 years, the project honed the beam to be able to be set to different programs, and when run, they could change people's moods, increase the crime rate, even affect animals in the vicinity of the base. They could focus it on a car and stop all electrical functions in it, which is kind of an interesting thought if we consider the examples of alien abductions and UFO sightings.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, look at the Welsh Triangle, an area in Wales with a high number of reported UFO sightings and the potential US experiments done in the area that allegedly involve cars stopping. But yeah, I mean, any connection remains speculative, right?
Yeah, and just to put in here as well, like that, I mean, isn't that experiment isn't too outside the realms of possibility, considering what they can do with sound in terms of making people feel like immense discomfort and upset and things like that. Like these are actual weapons that are used that we know exist, you know? Um,
I thought you were going to go down the brown noise route.
not yet, not yet. Um, I think we mentioned it before, and maybe we'll chat about it in After Weird, but yeah, there was a footage in Hungary, I think, or might have been Romania, um, of some riots, and it seems like they employed a sound weapon. Like you
Mm.
just see the crowd just part all of a sudden, you know, and just run off
What's
screaming.
and there's the other one. Was it Hawaii or somewhere where a bunch of
Cuba, I think,
and a whole bunch of people were affected by
yeah,
something?
got quite badly affected, like brain problems, and they
Yeah,
think it was potentially a sound weapon being used through the walls.
yeah. So they're not
Yeah, I mean
that
these
far
these things do
removed from
exist.
reality.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
100%. Um, Now these guys loved a chair, and so we come to what was known as the Montauk chair. Preston says how this was developed by ITT, a real life real technology company, although there's no evidence of their involvement in such a project. Now, how they this was developed is a mystery, but rumors say it was aided by an alien race known as the Syrians. The Syrians are often described in UFO lore as an advanced extraterrestrial civilization. The Montauk chair was developed as a mind reading device. Someone could visualize something and it would appear on the screen. Montauk wanted to turn this machine into a transmitter to cut the risks when humans underwent invisibility or time experimentation, as with the Philadelphia Project. The idea was that when the ship became invisible, a person in the chair could transmit an alternate reality to the crew, saving them from being disoriented or mentally lost.
By late 1977, they had honed the chair to the point where if Duncan thought of something, it would materialize somewhere on the base. And by 79, they were able to target masses of people, affecting anything they wanted. They could turn off a TV, move objects with telekinesis, or destroy entire rooms with mind control. Animals could be made to charge through town, windows could be broken. So Now we dive into one of the most unsettling aspects of the Montauk Project narrative, the alleged Montauk boys. The claim is that as they experimented with time travel and psychological warfare, the project began abducting local children aged 9 to 16. Often they were kids no one would really kind of notice were missing, but they were described consistently as male, white, blonde haired, blue eyed.
It's all going a bit Nazi again.
Yeah, the belief is that thousands of these children were taken to secret underground labs beneath what is now Camp Hero State Park. Once there, the allegations are horrific. We have disturbing alleged first-hand accounts like that of James Bruce, who recounted being force-fed hallucinogenic drugs in the acid room and attempts at teleportation.
That's horrifying. So these were just kids.
Allegedly. We're using that a lot today.
I mean, yeah, the whole thing's quite allegedly, isn't it?
We should have just done a warning at the beginning, but all right. So Stuart Swerdlow claimed regular abductions from the age of 13, initially targeting marginalized children, but later those with specific genetics. He alleged memory wiping, genetic alterations, witnessing horrific abuse with parallels to Nazi experiments and a goal of global mind control. He even describes a dampening field to explain his parents' lack of concern. The scale of this abuse is shocking, with claims of thousands of children subjected to mind control through frequencies and potential acid tests in bizarrely decorated rooms. But these claims gain a disturbing potential grounding through the work of local explorer Brian Minnick, who for 30 years has explored Camp Hero. He claims to have footage of underground chambers, evidence of activity long after closure, like massive food orders, and even a sealed underground tunnel with a vault-like door. His photos also corroborate the existence of rooms with psychedelic walls.
So there's physical evidence suggesting something unusual was happening underground and in those rooms?
That's what Mimic's claims and findings suggest. Even more disturbingly, a researcher called Joseph Garatano spoke with Joe Lafrino. This is a mouthful, this, isn't it? A current Camp Hero Park employee who claims to be one of the Montauk boys mentioned in Nicole's book. Now, Lafrano, recalling memories under hypnosis, describes being abducted around age 12 or 13, taken underground through a former World War II gunnery and subjected to analysis with electrode wires and feeling like animals. He believes there were up to 50 other children and fears some may have been killed.
So this is no longer just abstract claims. This is someone alleging direct personal trauma, potentially backed by Minnick's discoveries.
So according to Preston, all new recruits, as we'll call them, were all initially sent via portals to a ruined city in 6037. In the centre of this deserted city was a statue of a golden horse. Just quickly say as well, for if you're watching, hence the cover.
Yes.
So the Montauk boys, as they were come to be known, were sent to read the inscription on the pedestal and report back.
So is this sort of some kind of initiation test?
It could be.
In the first book on the Montauk Project, Preston claims to not know what was done when time travel was used. He was never sent himself as he was too important. He knows a lot was done around the First and Second World Wars. They weren't just peeking at historical events, they were allegedly trying to manipulate them. However, by book 2, Montauk Revisited, we get this fascinating story. What?
This story's great.
It revolves around Montauk researcher known as Stan, who was sent on a truly unbelievable mission. So Craig has written this script, and it literally says here, "Buckle up, Andy." I am. Stan's mission, as he supposedly recalled under hypnosis.
I was meant to put that in italics. I didn't mean for you to read that.
Well, here we are. Stan's mission, as he supposedly recalled under hypnosis, had two parts. First, he was to travel back in time to the time of Christ and retrieve a sample of his blood. Secondly, he was then ordered to assassinate Jesus.
Wait, they tried to kill Jesus? Seriously?
That's the claim. The shock. The shock in your voice. Um, that is the claim. Stan supposedly arrived just before the crucifixion and encountered Jesus, who incredibly knew why he was there. Christ apparently volunteered a vial of his blood, but told Stan that he wasn't ready to die yet and Stan wouldn't be able to kill him.
And did Stan try?
The account says that Stan, operating under his Montauk orders, emptied his revolver into Jesus, but it had absolutely no effect. Fuck! The whole experience, while feeling like 2 months to Stan, supposedly only lasted about 10 hours in Montauk time. The narrative then suggests that Stan may have somehow become Judas or walked into his body, fulfilling the biblical betrayal and arranging for Christ's death, all under orders from Montauk. It admitted in the book that this is highly controversial. Just a tad. But the story doesn't end there. Stan supposedly returns to Montauk with the vial of Christ's blood. He didn't want to give it up, but he then felt a burning sensation as the blood went through him like an exorcism. Went through him? Did he swallow it? Following this, he was sent through a portal to Mars.
Told you.
Yeah. On Mars, Stan was told to hand over the blood to Christ, who he would find there. He emerged from an underground area and saw a figure in robes near some rocks who looked like Christ, but when Stan approached and handed over the blood, the figure looked up, and it was Duncan Cameron.
Wait, Duncan from earlier?
Yeah!
The one
yeah,
who was sent to kill Preston? Masquerading as Jesus on Mars? This is officially the most bizarre thing we've ever covered.
One of, if not the, indeed. The alleged reason for all this, the Montauk Project directors supposedly wanted Christ's blood to mix with Duncan's DNA, giving him the same blood coding as the Shroud of Turin, in a twisted attempt to present Duncan as the Second Coming. The book suggests Duncan was being groomed as the Antichrist, and this whole bizarre time travel and blood retrieval mission was part of that agenda. However, the account also claims that Christ's blood ended up having a cleansing effect on Duncan, changing his personality for the better and ultimately leading to the sabotage of the Montauk Project.
You couldn't make this shit up.
Well, could, and yeah, they probably did. Yeah, I think maybe they did. Fucking hell.
So, Andy, as you mentioned Mars, it's worth mentioning the Mars mission stuff here. So we've all heard of the Mars Viking mission video where people thought they saw a face on Mars.
Yeah.
Some thought there was a Sphinx, which led to stories of pyramids on Mars. You aware of that stuff?
I'm aware of it. No, I'm aware of it. I was just thinking, back in, even like back as far as Victorian, sort of, when they were sort of first chucking sort of decent telescopes sort of towards Mars, they swore they saw like canals on there and stuff. And
yeah, canals is an old one. Yeah. But there was this specific one with a face. I think everyone should be familiar with it.
Yeah.
So according to the book Alternative 3, which itself is a whole other rabbit hole about a supposed secret space program, there was a colony living on Mars and people landed there in 1962. But the ancient pyramids were so well sealed, no one could get into them.
A Mars colony in 62. We have gone full sci-fi now. As if the time travel, I guess, we hadn't done already. I don't know. So let me guess. That's where Montauk's time portal tech came in, right?
Exactly. So in 82 or 3, Duncan opened a portal directly into the underground section of the Mars pyramid. Duncan himself was sent to Mars, and scouting through timelines, they found the inhabitants were 125,000 years in the past.
Oh.
Preston is unsure what was discovered there, though it is believed the pyramid acted as a solar system defense. Now, the Montauk Project team wanted it shut off before anything else could be done, and this was done retroactive to 1943. Something Preston claims is why the UFO phenomena kicks off then.
Mm.
Yes. One more interesting thing of note is how time travel was implemented using particular times. So 43, 63, 83, connected to an apparent 20-year cycle of Earth. But this idea of specific recurring intervals in time travel reminded me of a kind of strikingly of one of my favorite TV series of all time, Dark. It's a German series.
Okay.
Have you seen Dark?
No, have not.
It's a fantastic show. So in Dark, time travel operates on a 33-year cycle. The way it played with reality in the sense of a hidden hand manipulating events does remind me a bit of the overall feeling you get from the Montauk Project.
Anyway, enough of this fantastic sci-fi talk. Back to the grounded reality of Montauk.
Oh, we also didn't mention that it does specifically name check. What's it called? I was talking about it with Emma earlier. Arnold Schwarzenegger film. He goes to Mars.
Oh,
In a chair.
yeah, shit. What's it called? Total Recall.
Yeah, something that we don't have. Yeah, no, he specifically name checks Total Recall being based on the Montauk Project.
Amazing.
Yep. Anyway, where do we get to? August the 5th, 1983, which you'll notice is getting incredibly close to when I was born. Just coincidence. They were given the order to keep the transmitter running non-stop, and by August 12th, fitting in with the 20-year cycles we mentioned earlier, the USS Eldridge, along with Duncan and his brother, appeared through the portal. Now, Preston says at this time him and 3 colleagues had misgivings about the project and created a plan to crash the project, thus saving the Earth from the pitfalls and karma of dealing with time travel. Duncan was the one to initiate the plan. At the correct time, when he was in the chair, someone would approach him and simply say, "The time is now." At this time, he would set forth a hairy monster from his subconscious, described by Preston as big, hairy, hungry, and nasty. It appeared somewhere on the base, eating and smashing everything, and would be described differently by everyone who saw it.
A hairy monster. That's how they ended the Montauk Project. A hairy monster.
According to Preston, yeah. And the supervisor ordered the generator turned off to stop the beast, but this did nothing. So the decision was made to turn off the transmitter both on Montauk and back in the past, back on the Eldridge. This too didn't work, so they cut the power, having to cut and smash cables directly from the power station before they were able to shut everything down, and the monster disappeared again back into the ether. Supposedly this was the end of the Montauk Project, with personnel being rounded up, debriefed and brainwashed, but it's worth remembering that not everyone buys this wild tale.
Yeah. One local named Paul Fagan spent 14 years digging through government documents at the National Archives in Manhattan. His conclusion? The secrecy surrounding the underground facilities at Camp Hero might have far more mundane, albeit still potentially concerning explanation. He suggested to the New York Post that there might be a secretly buried nuclear reactor left over from the Cold War era. He even suspects that the outlandish conspiracy theories might have been deliberately planted to distract from this possibility.
A nuclear reactor, that's a whole different level of unsettling. So instead of time travel and psychic kids, we're talking about potential radioactive waste?
It certainly offers a more grounded reason, though, doesn't it, for the secrecy and the extensive underground structures.
In a strange echo of these tales, Montauk has continued to be a source of bizarre stories. And in more recent times, do you remember that whole Montauk monster thing in 2008?
Yeah, that's that weird hairless sort of creature blobby thing that washed up on the beach. Sort of caused quite a bit of a stir. The sort of thing if we were making a podcast back then would have made it into weird news.
While it's likely just a decomposed animal, the mystery surrounding it, the lack of a clear identification, and the fact it happened in Montauk, a place already steeped in these kinds of strange legends, definitely added to the area's overall mystique. It's almost like the weirdest never really left.
Yeah, a lingering shadow of the Montauk Project, perhaps, or just a really strange-looking raccoon.
Yeah, and as we delve into the more critical perspective surrounding Preston Nichols, the accounts of his alleged deprogramming methods become particularly disturbing. One report details the experience of a man who sought Nichols' help for suspected Montauk Project involvement. The account suggests that Nichols required the individual to live near him for an extended period and would conduct unusual private sessions.
Unusual private sessions. Well, these weren't just talking sessions. According to reports, they involved Nichols requiring the subject to undress and lie down, whereupon Nichols would massage their legs, arms, chest, and head. Then, most disturbingly, he would reportedly manipulate their genitals, stroking the penis to the edge of orgasm, a state he believed would somehow reverse the sexual magic of the Montauk chair. He would then allegedly ground the subjects by gripping their testicles.
And during these incredibly invasive sessions, Nichols would also reportedly share elaborate stories of alien abductions and parallel dimensions, instructing the individuals to find answers within their own memories, essentially guiding them to confirm his own Montauk narrative. An eyewitness account from someone familiar with these situations described multiple individuals undergoing similar private sessions with Nichols, often emerging with bizarre, fantastical stories, while Nichols himself appeared physically exhausted afterwards.
These are not the words I envisioned myself recording today. It's vital to... Oh, fucking hell. Well, it is vital to approach these accounts with extreme caution. The power of suggestion during memory recall is well documented, and the intensely personal and physically intimate nature of these sessions, as described, raises some ethical questions about potential manipulation, abuse of trust, and exploitation of vulnerable individuals seeking answers and healing. While these reports remain largely unverified by independent sources, and Nichols himself denied any abusive intent, claiming he wanted to make the kids normal again. Fuck. Bear in mind, despite all the accusations throwing at Nichols, they weren't kids at this point. But, it all contributes to a deeply critical and disturbing view of Preston Nichols and the deeply questionable methods he allegedly employed. Regardless of the larger claims surrounding the Montauk Project, these personal accounts, even if partially accurate, paint a troubling picture of the man at its centre and the potential impact on those who sought his guidance. And it's these kinds of ethically murky areas where personal accounts clash with official narratives that make you wonder about other times the government has delved into the bizarre, like with Project MKUltra. This was a top secret program that ran from the 50s to the 70s, and its aim was to develop methods for controlling the human mind using psychological manipulation.
Yeah, I mean, we're not talking about science fiction here. Declassified documents show that MKUltra involved some truly disturbing experiments on unwitting US and Canadian citizens. They explored the effects of psychoactive drugs like LSD, often administered without consent, as well as hypnosis, sensory deprivation, electroshock therapy, and even verbal abuse. The goal was to see if they could weaken individuals and force confessions or even completely control their actions. It's a really dark chapter in government history, and it highlights the potential for secret agencies to cross serious ethical boundaries in the name of national security.
You've also got projects like the Stargate Project. Now, this wasn't about opening portals under giant mountains or other dimensions like in the sci-fi show, but it was still pretty out there. It was a real US Army unit established in the late 1970s and run until the mid 1990s that investigated the potential for psychic phenomena in military and domestic intelligence applications.
So we're talking about things like remote viewing, the supposed ability to psychically see events or locations from a distance. The government actually funded studies and had individuals who claimed to have these abilities. Well, the CIA ultimately concluded that the Stargate project was never actually useful for intelligence operations. The fact that they invested time and money into exploring psychic abilities shows that the idea of manipulating the mind and perception wasn't entirely dismissed at the highest levels. So, Andy, do you think anyone is still listening at this point? No? So do you believe the Montauk Project really happened?
Oh well, yeah, obviously the evidence is overwhelming. I mean, Nichols sort of reminds me of a certain chap we've dealt with before, to an extent, but if you know who I mean,
Does his name rhyme with Eater Fadget?
it might do. It might do. I wonder if they know each other, um,
Well, they can't. Preston's dead, but
or knew each other. But well, I don't know. Is anything outside the realms of possibility for these people? You know, with time travel and the blood of Christ. I mean, fuck. Yeah. Long. Yeah. Short answer: do I believe it is no? The long answer is no. The thing is, it like the first like portion of it is almost believable. You know, it's
well,
like
where did I lose you?
I think it was going into time travel and the blood of Christ. In
Ah,
terms of like, so in terms of experiment with like using different frequencies and radar, the like to actual alter people's perceptions and mood. Absolutely, would believe that was an experiment. You know, um, and I don't know my thoughts on the Philadelphia experiment. I've got a feeling that was bullshit too. But then it just gets then the T-100 turns up, like saying that his mission was to kill Nichols, and it just kind of goes more and more batshit from there, really, doesn't it?
no, I
What about
believe it
you?
100%.
100%.
Look, this is the problem, right? There
It's
are
in a
enough
book. It's in a
elements.
book. Therefore,
I read it in a book. It's real. No, but there are, as you said, there are elements that we know are real. There's enough truth in it that I wonder whether some kind of Montauk project did exist. Not saying they successfully time traveled or anything like that, but maybe they were trying, and
yeah.
that's where these ideas come from. But likewise, you got that whole idea that they'd want other countries around the world to think they have this technology, right?
Oh
So,
yeah,
like,
100%. It's like the Star Wars project. Obviously less nuts, but you know, um,
is it? Is
Ray,
it less nice?
Reagan and Thatcher convinced the USSR that we had an active sort of laser defense system to either guide missiles to intercept nukes or literally could shoot them out the sky with like satellite mounted lasers, and convinced them to the point we were so close to it that they basically bankrupted themselves trying to catch up. You know, it's there is definitely real life provable examples of governments trying to convince other governments that they're way ahead with this like out there like real bizarre stuff. But I don't know. Then you throw in that Nichols also was apparently a sex pest. So, it's I think whatever the truth of any of it, he was very delusional and you know, probably wasn't involved at all.
Yeah. So, are we going to go into some after weird?
I think so. I think so. Although, yeah, how do you follow up with that weird?
So, head to our website, weirdwessex.co.uk, which is also our Substack. You can subscribe for free. If you like what we do, you can contribute a little bit to our monthly costs. But you'll get notifications every time we bring out new content. So that's the best place to follow us at the moment. We are on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube as well. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. And until next time, as always, stay weird.